I think when we're talking about Texas and Oklahoma, I think it's interesting because it's almost a bit like Oregon and USC, even if Oregon doesn't have the history that Oklahoma does, in that like Oklahoma's definitely been the more successful football team recently and does have a great history. I mean, it's Oklahoma, USC, Ohio State, Notre Dame, who all have 7 Heisman winners in their history. And then, but Texas is weird because Texas is more of a brand than anything else, right? The winning has not been there. It's maybe back right now. But speaking of Texas, it's time to switch over to Little Rivals Down South. But kind of keep that going, right? Like Oklahoma adding more football history, Texas adding kind of some brand power. Because quite frankly, guys, Texas has been bad for a while now. Like they might be pretty good this year, but I'm not entirely sold. Joshua, Jake, y'all give us the kind of outside perspective on how you view the Sooners and the Longhorns.
So when I want to just stay with Texas in particular because that's the conversation we're having here. And the good thing about a big brand is it's the TV market. There's very little that's bad about adding a big brand, except for the risk that the expectations are sky high. And I say that because I know this as a Michigan guy. When I committed to the University of Michigan back in 2011, coming off a Sugar Bowl victory, Michigan's back, and then the program went like this. And that doesn't just affect Michigan. It affects the view of the conference as from an outside perspective. Yep. Because you say, wait a minute, this is one of your blue bloods? This is one of your best programs? What's going on there? Now, Texas did beat Alabama, and it looks like this year has a chance to be something special. But as you guys have kind of highlighted, it hasn't been that historically. So that's kind of my view and the risk on Texas, Joshua.
Yeah, I think Texas, the expectation level has been incongruent with what they actually have been as a program. And you mentioned it's because of the brand that they have and all the money that is flooded through the athletic department. I think people just believe that they should be a perennial contender. Part of this idea, too, is I think coaching, right? And Sark feels like he's the right guy, right? Like right now it seems like they're building a program the right way. I think they missed on a lot of coaches, and most athletic departments do when they turn over coaches. It's like the most common thing that happens. I think it's what Oklahoma is starting to do as well. Brent Venables is proving that he's the right type of guy. And where I think this is an important conversation is when you're in the day and age of big money TV deals and spending, you can get coaches in and out pretty quickly. Like if you feel like you don't have the guy, you turn it over and you bring in a new guy and see if it works. And so these programs will have opportunities down the line to really solidify themselves. But I wanted to flip a question back to you guys because the more I think about these teams that are coming in, you know, I'm looking at a Dylan Gabriel who feels like he's played college football for forever, and Quinn Ewers is one of the top draftable quarterbacks. Michael Penix Jr., same thing. Caleb Williams out the door. Bo Nix. Dante Moore is the only guy who feels like, you know, he's got some longevity there to really help enhance the profile of these teams. Does it worry you at all that we're going to be losing some of the great quarterbacks at these schools?
It doesn't worry me long term because that's all going to kind of ebb and flow, right? And so the brand power, the TV matchup of like Oklahoma versus Alabama is still going to be sexy, regardless of who the quarterback may be at the time. Now, granted, the quality may take a step back, and I want to be clear, dude. I'm a Sark hater. I was like Sark hater number one. Texas fans have made me eat an entire murder of crows after the T-Town game. Like that man's never even won 10 games. Like, let's let him win 10 games before he crown him. Maybe he's the answer. And I was kind of there with Venables as well. But, again, Brent Venables doing good on the recruiting trail, and he got the big win. So we'll see. Again, I'm not sold on those coaches necessarily. I am sold on those brands. I want to go off script here for a second, though, boys, because we got Jim Harbaugh out here calling J.J. McCarthy the best quarterback in Michigan history. And it led me down a 20-minute wormhole. And, my God, Jake, where are all the quarterbacks?
Yeah, dude.
Y'all's quarterback history is awful. And where's the national championships? Why are they all pre or right around World War II? I can't support that. Like, are you Texas? What's going on here?
Look, hey, we got one in 97, though. I know it was a shared. The banner, I've seen it. It's in Ann Arbor.
How old were you in 97, real quick?
I was 2 years old in 97.
Okay. Just for everybody to know out there.
Listen, I'm going to earn some credibility here because I'm a realist, all right? I do love Michigan, but I am a realist. Quarterbacks have been one of the biggest issues, right? Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time, and he barely played at Michigan, right? He just has this small sample size. It's not like he was a Heisman candidate there. That's That's been the issue going back for a decade. So, you know, if you want to compare it to what Lincoln Riley does or Alabama or Ohio State, some of these schools with great college quarterbacks, the bar is pretty low. But I will say JJ is special even outside of that context, in my opinion. And Coach Harbaugh is not a guy that just hands out compliments. He's a great quarterback in his own right. I think he's being pretty realistic about JJ. He thinks he is that special.
I love what he's saying about JJ because I think it is true. I think he could go down as the best quarterback that Michigan's ever had. I think it's when Jim Harbaugh gets to Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy, it's like Jordan and LeBron. I'm going to have to pump the brakes on that.
Caleb helped us with that last week, though. Caleb helped us.
Because his 3 interceptions came against Notre Dame when JJ's came against Bowling Green, right? Neither here nor there. But I think that he is one of the biggest reasons why they've been able to ascend. Defensively, I think that they have a great system, and those guys play really hard. Offensive line's built. They've got the running backs. But having a quarterback like J.J. McCarthy is the reason why people think, and the reason why I believe that they are a national championship contender.
Yeah, look, so that's the craziest part about it is like J.J. McCarthy is guaranteed going to have the best statistical season of all time at Michigan. It's just whether or not they win the Natty. Jake, one more thing before you go. What you got?
What has hurt Michigan is the scheme. Like when I got there, our quarterback stat line is almost as we view Iowa. Like our quarterbacks would be like 9 for 14 for 120 yards, 1 touchdown, and 0 interceptions. And we were running fullback dive like 8 times a game. Now that what you would really hope if you're Jim is to take this momentum of JJ and start to make this a year in, year out thing, even outside of him.
Yeah, look, I played for a Michigan man myself in Les Miles, Jake.
That's
so
right.
I get it.
That's right.
I get it. A lot of power toss, baby. All right, Joshua. All right, Jake. Y'all take it easy. Those are the red quarter, blue quarter guys. SEC Mike, it's time for me and you to dive into some Week 8 SEC games. We'll holler at y'all later this week, and here we go. Mississippi State, Arkansas, a couple of teams in desperate need of a win. A little ranked-on-ranked matchup in T-Town. I love it. Mizzou trying to continue their ascent against a South Carolina team that is floundering. Auburn, Ole Miss, tricky spot here for Ole Miss. And then LSU taking on the Armed Forces, Army. Of course, I've always been more of a naval fan myself, SEC Mike, so I'm fully ready to dominate Army this weekend. But let's start with Tennessee, Alabama. The matchup going down in T-Town. And Mike, for those that don't know, Mike hosts that SEC podcast, highest rated SEC podcast on all platforms. And he is a Tennessee man himself. And he was a little worried about Jimbo Fisher coming to town last week. And I just want to say congrats, Mike. Y'all did it. You held serve. It was ugly, but you found a way to win, dude.
Yeah, and I'm just glad the Vols let everybody in the nation know what I already know, that Jimbo's a clown. Get him out of here. The rest of the SEC, they're probably rooting for Jimbo to stay in College Stations. True. Maybe year 7, maybe year 8 is the year for Jimbo. But I am nervous about this Alabama game, T-Bob, because I just don't think that kind of style, I don't think you could beat Bama, and I don't think you could beat Georgia running the ball and playing defense, because that's what Georgia and Alabama are built upon. I think you got to throw the rock. You got to beat them one-on-one down the field. And that is just something that we've not seen this season for Josh Heupel's Tennessee Vols.
So me coming from the LSU Nation, you from Tennessee, we are people that have suffered under the heel of Crimson oppression. We've talked about it before. LSU went about, I think, 8 or 9 years without beating them following that natty loss. For Tennessee, I know it was longer. What would it mean to the Volunteer faithful if Tennessee can make it 2 years in a row against the Tide?
Well, bring a big smile to my face, T-Bow, because I've been calling this the decaying dynasty there in Tuscaloosa for the better part of a year. And I think this would drive that stake into Nick Saban's dynasty. Because if you can't beat this Tennessee team at home, how in the world are you going to beat this red-hot LSU offense in a couple weeks? How in the world are you going to beat the Georgia Bulldogs, which I've said on national television, I think Georgia win by about 4 touchdowns over Alabama. I think they'll be dead. They'll lose 3-4 games on the season, Alabama will, if they can't beat this Tennessee team, because they got some tougher games upcoming. So, yeah, I would certainly be glad if they could do it.
So, I mean, you know what, let's unite our forces, Mike, and here's to hoping that Heupel and Kelly can both make it 2 in a row against the Tide. Next up, we got a battle of the bads, and it's Mississippi State and Arkansas. Both teams winless in conference right now, but for very different reasons. Let's be painfully clear about Arkansas. They have played maybe the hardest schedule in the entire country. Like, they have faced 4 top 20 S&P plus teams in a row. I think they've only lost by a combined 24. Sam Pittman, yes, his seat is getting hot. Yes, the Sharks are circling, but Arkansas needs to be a bit careful here, right? Like, that said, I think Zach Arnett, I think Arnett's already a dead man walking. I think Mississippi State's done with Arnett. He took what was a team that finished 9-4 last year under Mike Leach and won the Egg Bowl and had momentum and had exciting offense and had a quarterback that was going to break all of Aaron Murray's SEC records. He took that thing and he just dismantled it. And it's crumbled in front of Bulldogs fans' eyes. So in terms of who needs this more, I already think Zach Arnett's dead. So I think it's Sam Pittman.
Yeah, and I honestly think, T-Bob, that the losing coach in this game, to your point, will not be back next season. And I have heard the same things. I mean, I think Zach Arnett is on a very, very short leash there in Starkville. These two teams right now, T-Bob, they're combined 0 for 7 in SEC play. And I realize people look down on them. They think little old Mississippi State and Arkansas. But how about this? I believe Georgia and maybe Alabama, but beyond those two, Mississippi State's got the longest bowl streak in the SEC. This is not little old Mississippi State of years old. This is a proud program that bottom line expects making a bowl game. They're not going to make it if they lose this game. And the same thing with Arkansas. I mean, the high expectations, won 9 games just 2 years ago. We cannot be losing 6 games in a row here for the Arkansas Razorbacks. So must win for both these coaches.
The thing is, I don't think it's a hard decision for Mississippi State. There's awful circumstances that led to Zach Arnett getting the job in the first place. Like, avoid the sunken cost fallacy. Just cut bait, move on, and get an exciting coach. There's there's a lot. Like, what about like a Willie Fritz from Tulane or something? I don't know. Time will tell. Next up, in Jordan-Hare, Ole Miss. Ole Miss right now, look, they're not in an awful spot, right? They could cheer for Alabama to maybe catch an SEC loss somewhere along the way. Actually, I guess they'd have to catch 2, but whatever. Ole Miss 13th in the country right now. Pretty good. Traveling to Jordan-Hare. And we saw what Auburn did against Georgia when they got to play at home, right? 28-20, a battle that Auburn had the lead for the majority of the game. It's a different Auburn team when you're playing over there as opposed to, well, let's say Death Valley. Do you think has Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss arrived at a place where they can go into that environment and walk away with a win, especially with the added narrative context of Lane Kiffin turning down Auburn to remain at Ole Miss this past offseason?
Right, and additional bad blood, T-Bob, between Kiffin and Hugh Freeze. They've been stealing each other's players, stealing each other's coaches. There is no love loss here between these two. And I call Lane Kiffin, I call him Lane Whiffen for a reason. So I'm right there with you. I mean, I think this is a very losable game for Ole Miss. They are the only SEC team on the road this weekend that is a favorite. And I think that's fair. I'm not saying they shouldn't be favored, but I think Auburn can catch Ole Miss. I really do think that this is one that Hugh Freeze and company have circled. If they're going to make a bowl game, they may have to pull an upset at the tail end of the season here, and this is the one that I really like. So I think this is a 4-quarter dogfight. I really do.
Never forget, Auburn has a belief that is unparalleled in the SEC, maybe save for the culty behaviors of Texas A&M and their yell leaders. Otherwise, you're not going to find a more zealous fan base than the Auburn Tigers. That place is going to be loud. It's going to be crazy. And we're going to see how real this Ole Miss team is. All right, coming up next, it is the midweek point of the season, which means it's time for midterms. That's right. We are college football. Remember those in college? We're going to get out some grades when we get back here on Rivals Down South.